Happy Monday. Today we're going to start off with reviewing what we talked about last week, and then we will get into our new stuff. So last week we discussed that unit fractions are fractions that have 1 as its numerator. Doesn't matter what the denominator is, as long as the numerator is 1, that is considered a unit fraction. One thing you also need to remember, if our problem starts with a fraction, our answer will be a fraction. And if our problem starts with a whole number, our answer will be a whole number. So for example, today, Monday, December 7th, we are talking about unit fractions divided by whole numbers. All of our problems today are going to start with a unit fraction. So that means that all of our answers today are going to be unit fractions as well. So last week we talked about making models to help us solve fraction problems, division of fraction problems. So in this problem, 1/2 divided by 6, the denominator tells us how many columns we need, and columns, remember, run vertically up and down. The whole number tells us how many rows that we need. Rows run horizontally or side to side. Then the numerator tells us how many columns we need to shade. And since it is a 1, it's a unit fraction, we only shade one of those columns. And then we also just shade one of our rows. It doesn't matter which column, it doesn't matter which row that you shade, because the answer is still going to remain the same. And then we look to see how many blocks or how many pieces have both colors where they overlap. And in this case, it's only 1. And then we count the total number of boxes, and that will be 12. So our answer is 1/12. We can also come to this answer by multiplying 6 times 2. That will also give us 12. And because we know that if we start with a unit fraction, our answer is a unit fraction, I know that that 12 has to be my denominator. So then we looked at models using whole numbers divided by fractions. And so with this number 3, that tells me how many things I need to draw, circles, squares, whatever. I chose to draw rectangles for this one. I drew 3 rectangles. And because my denominator tells me how many pieces need to be in each one, I broke each one of my rectangles up into 4. And then all I need to do is count. And when I count those pieces, I end up with 12. And then we can also multiply. 3 times 4 gives me 12. And I know because I started with a whole number, I'm going to end with a whole number. So my answer is 12. All right, we are going to watch the vocabulary video just to help us remember the steps to multiply or dividing fractions.
Yeah, you know how this go. Keep, change, flip. Simple, right? Dividing fractions. Vocabulary. Let's go. Keep, change, flip. Yeah, that's the action. Everybody's gonna know how we're dividing fractions. Keep, change, flip. Yeah, that's the action. Everybody's gonna know how we're dividing fractions. Keep, change, flip. Yeah, that's the action. Everybody's gonna know how we're dividing fractions. Keep, change, flip. Yeah, that's the action. Everybody's gonna know how we're dividing fractions. Dividing fractions is easy, that's no lie. You just flip one, yep, then you multiply. Don't flip both, because that'll be strange. You need to keep one exactly the same. Yeah. Then the sign gets changed, division to multiplication, that's okay. Then flip the second fraction like you're on a grill. We multiply what's left, that's really real. Take 3/5 divided by 2/3. Keep, change, flip, that's the word. Keep 3/5 the same, change the sign so we multiply, that's the game. Flip 2/3, we get 3/2, then we can multiply, and so should you. 3 times 3 is 9, 2 times 5 is 10, 9/10 can't reduce it, that's the end. Why do we flip it? I'll explain the math. Dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by half. 20 students in your class divided by 2 would be 10 students. Or all we can do. 20 students in your class times half is 10. You'll see, you'll get the same thing at the end. Dividing is multiplying by the reciprocal. Keep, change, flip, yeah, that's the simple rule. Keep, change, flip, yeah, that's the action. Everybody's gonna know how we're dividing fractions. Keep, change, flip, yeah, that's the action. Everybody's gonna know how we're dividing fractions. Keep, change, flip, yeah, that's the action. Everybody's gonna know how we're dividing fractions. Keep, change, flip, yeah, that's the action. Everybody's gonna know how we're dividing fractions.
All right. So there are 3 steps to remember when it comes to dividing fractions. That first step is keep. That means we keep that first fraction the same. Next, we change the division sign to multiplication sign. And then we flip that second fraction. And when we flip the second fraction, we're finding it's reciprocal. Reciprocal is just a fancy word for a fraction that's been flipped over. So if I'm finding the reciprocal for 1/5, I just flip everything over. The 5 now becomes the numerator. The 1 now becomes the denominator. And so the reciprocal for 1/5 is 5/1. So let's try it. Now, there is another hint that you need to know when it comes to dividing fractions. Under every whole number, there's an invisible denominator of 1. You don't see it most of the time, but the time that it comes out is when we're dividing fractions. So the problem reads 1/5 divided by 3. And because there's that invisible denominator of 1 under 3, it turns that one into a fraction too. So first step, we keep the first fraction the same. We don't do anything to that 1/5. We leave it alone. Then we're going to change the division symbol to multiplication. And then we're going to flip that second fraction. We're finding its reciprocal. So when we go back, we had 3/1. All we did was flip it around. And now we have 1/3, 1/3. When we multiply fractions, remember we multiply straight across. So 1 times 1 gives me 1. And then 5 times 3 gives me 15. So my answer for 1/5 divided by 3 is 1/15. All right. Let's try this one. 1/2 divided by 7. So maybe my problem might read something along the lines of, Miss Houchins has 1/2 bag of candy. She wants to split it between 7 students. How many or how much candy will each student get? So again, keep, change, flip. Remember, we have our invisible denominator of 1. Keep that first fraction the same. Change the division sign to multiplication. And then flip that second fraction. So now we have the problem that reads 1/2 times 1/7. Multiply straight across. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 7 is 14. So our answer would be 1/14. So, like in our example, if I had 1/2 bag of candy and I wanted to split it between 7 students, each student would get 1/14 of the bag.